Well, here we are at the end of another week of Marvel Snap. To me, a week that's been really, really fun. Hopefully, it's been enjoyable to you with the start of the new season, the Dark Avengers with the season pass card Iron Patriot, and then, of course, the card we're talking about today that's in the Spotlight Cache, Victoria Hand. So let's review the card, let's review the data, talk about in these brief final moments, less than 24 hours that you have to get this card. Is it worth getting? And if you do have the card or you're thinking about getting it, deck ideas. Now, something to keep in mind is something that I shared in the Keys Decision videos, which, if you're watching this video at this point in time, you probably already know this, but just know that before the weekly rollover of new cards happens at, for me, it's noon. That's a convenient time. But before the rollover of new cards, before Moonstone enters the Spotlight caches, before the Spotlight changes, right? We start a new week. You get your Alliance rewards, all those types of things. There will be a patch that happens tomorrow, and there is time between that patch and when the Spotlight cache rolls over. As part of that patch, one of the changes is happening is that if you get that fourth random Spotlight cache card, and it is a duplicate, right? So two requirements got to be met. You got to get the random one, and it has to be a duplicate. If that is the case, instead of getting 1,000 collector's tokens, you'll now get 2,000. So if you haven't spent your keys on Victoria Hand, again, you probably already know this. If you haven't, it's a safe time to gamble your keys because of those increase in tokens. And I personally, as we'll talk about, I think this is a card that potentially is worth gambling on. Of course, your keys, your decisions, your resources, use them wisely. But again, strong card. Just know that this patch is happening. And in addition to some great changes to card acquisition, your collector's reserves, if your Series 3 incomplete, will now generate Series 3 cards twice as fast, which is a pretty big deal. So hopefully you've been saving your collector's reserves to open as soon as the patch is live. You can open them even if you earned them earlier, but they were unopened. You can open them now that the patch happened. So hopefully you've been able to save up a sum for a few weeks now and can get yourself a lot of Series 3 cards in one day. That'd be a cool thing to do. So moving on back to Victoria Hand, let's talk about the card. Let's talk about some decks, but first let's talk about the data. How's this card performing? As expected, it's sitting at a pretty high popularity rate. For the sake of looking at it here, if we just look, this is all coming from Untapped. If we look into Untapped, the season pass card is running at a 9.9 popularity rate, and Victoria Hand is sitting at a 7.8 popularity rate, as you can see here. So a little bit lower, but still really, really strong. We look at other cards here who have a really, really strong popularity rate. Cards similar to that, so cards like Ant-Man, Carnage, right, Wong, right, these big Rocket and Groot, Death, Venom, Arnim Zola, Blade, these cards that we seem to see everywhere. The collector, obviously, this week in particular, of similar popularity, which for a new card is pretty strong. Its win rate is sitting higher than the season, or also lower, than the season pass card, but still a strong win rate at 58.7%, and then a cube rate of plus 0.61 cubes, which is a lot higher than we were looking at last week with Rocket and Groot, but that is because it's the first week of the season. We're all on the climb for ladder, so we're going against bots more frequently, so cubes are a lot higher, that type of thing. So yeah, cube rate is a little bit higher, but again, it just reveals that this is a strong card, and we'll talk about that. My rating, did I get this card? Yes. If you listen to my video on Keys Decisions, I spent 8 keys on it to get the variant because I liked it. It was brutal. But, I'm okay with that. One, because I really, really like this card. As you can see in my rating here, I don't have I'm glad that I have a variant that I like for this card because it's a card I'm going to keep playing. It's a card that I'm having a lot of fun with, and that's what matters to me in Marvel Snap. But from a meta standpoint and a game standpoint, this is a card that I give 5 stars, and I have the potential to keep it with 5 stars. I don't think it's going to change. I don't think that it's overwhelming. It's not. I'm trying to think of something, like Surtur. When Surtur first happened, if my opponent played Surtur on turn 3, I just knew that I was losing. If my opponent plays Victoria Hand, I'm not planning on losing. I know that I've got some competition and I've got to play smart. I got to be wary of what things are doing to generate cards and thinking about that. But I'm not backing out, retreating immediately. So it's not game busting in that realm, but it is a really, really strong card in its specific archetype. And to me, it's actually the winner over the season pass card. I think the season pass card of Iron Patriot is viable in more options. Obviously Victoria Hand, you got to generate cards to your hand. But I think that this is the winning card this week more than Iron Patriot. In fact, the video that I made about Iron Patriot, that was more a Victoria Hand deck than it is an Iron Patriot deck. He's just in it, right? You could talk about Iron Patriot can exist outside of Victoria Hand. But I think Victoria Hand is a stronger card. I think Victoria Hand is going to be the more meta competitive card. I think Victoria Hand is going to have more staying power than Iron Patriot. Like, Iron Patriot is a very, very fun card, and I think after the season we're going to see his meta share decrease quite a bit. But I think Victoria Hand will stay around, and that's why I keep this potential, because she is more of an archetype enabler than Iron Patriot is. Iron Patriot doesn't open up a new archetype. Iron Patriot fits within existing archetypes, or he's just a fun card to play, or whatever you create an like. There's not an Iron Patriot archetype. There is now a hand generation. We're going to call it the Victoria Hand archetype because, yeah, sure, it's the Shield archetype, but it's also the Mirage archetype and the Hood archetype and the Frigga archetype. Like, it's all those cards. But Victoria Hand is a card that is enabling that to be extremely competitive. If you watched Alec Kosh's Top Decks of the Week, the #1 deck was a Victoria Hand deck. And I think that's important because it proves the strength of this card, but more so than just the strength of it, I think that something, and I talked about this when I was talking in my Discord with my alliance, it's something that I appreciate about Second Dinner that they're doing with the cards that they're designing. These cards aren't coming out of nowhere. They have to be intentional in how they're designing these cards and what's being released. And as part of that, and they've been doing this for a few weeks now, some time, it's not just with Victoria Hand. Scream did the same thing, where they're adding more options of archetypes that are viable to play. Doom 2099 is an example. That is like a new archetype. We didn't have a Doom archetype beforehand. It wasn't like Toxin, who added to an existing archetype of Bounce. Yeah, sure, that archetype became more accessible to people. It elevated itself, but it didn't create a new one. And it didn't bring an archetype that maybe existed into a realm of being competitive, like I think Scream did or Madam Web did with Move. Victoria Hand does that to me. It enables you to play the Shield card generation archetype in a way that's competitive, and I think that is why I give her the 5 stars, because that archetype she enables. I also just think she's a ton of fun. I've been having I think the randomness of card generation, I think creating a deck around her is fun. I think the cards you get to play in order to benefit from Victoria Hand are fun. Like, I'm having a lot of Mirage is a really fun card to play. I wish I would have been playing Mirage for the longest time. So Victoria Hand, great card. Hellcarrier, right? We get to play these fun cards that we normally don't. And Victoria Hand enables that, in addition to creating an archetype that's competitive. So let's get into deck ideas. If you do have Victoria Hand, or you think about picking up Victoria Hand, some decks that you can play. I went to Untapped Data, and this is the one that had, of course, we're weighing win rate and cubes and games played. I'm not as analytical as Alex Kosha is, but this is the deck that has the most games while still having a significant win rate above almost to 60% and a good cube rate of 0.67, which, again, keep in mind that the cube rate is higher because this week we're all climbing on the ladder. But this is the thing we've been seeing ever. It is the Wiccan deck. Wiccan seems to be the strongest version of this card generation deck because, one, a lot of these cards are cheap, and, Maria Hill, it gives you a 2 cost to play. Hawkeye, Kate Bishop allows you to play your energy well, that type of thing. Agent Coulson is a 3 that generates a 4, that type of thing. You benefit from that need for Wiccan, but also that extra energy that Wiccan gives you allows you to play those extra cards that you've generated. And he's been in all versions of Victoria Hand, Wiccan is a really, really strong card in agreement now. So here's the one that people have. Some version of this is the one that's doing the best, of course, including some good tech cards like Enchantress and Shang. Obviously be careful where you play your Victoria Hand, because you don't want to Enchantress your own Victoria Hand, so on and so forth. But there's the deck. The next one is not including Wiccan, and this one is focused on Devil Dinosaur. This is close to the version that I've been playing. In fact, it actually might be the exact same. I can't remember. But Devil Dinosaur, right, which has been a ton of fun. Mystique is a great inclusion to either copy the Devil Dinosaur or Victoria Hand. That's been one of my favorite plays on turn 6 is playing Devil Dinosaur on 5, Mystiquing the Devil Dinosaur, and then playing Agent Coulson on 6 and boosting both the Devil Dinosaur and Mystique. Anyway, great card, or great deck, and it's fun to see Devil Dinosaur back in the meta, right? He's been one of the whatever, that card was kind of one of the beginning archetypes that got a lot of people to Infinite when Snap first started. So it's cool to see it back in a viable way. Also cool to see cards like Snowguard showing up. Man, I did not, when you got Quinjet down and Victoria Hand, those are, three, I think they're both 3/4s. They become 2/6s. They both become a Maximus, and they also have like a genuine benefit. You can turn off Limbo. Oh, the amount of games I've won or lost when my opponent played, I think it's the Bear or the Hawk. I think the Hawk ignores locations, and the Limbo is just turned off. Right? Really fun card to be able to play. Talking about the other decks here, this one, as you can see, the games played drops off quite a bit. This is similar to the one that I came up with that I made a video about. We got Misery and the Hood, that type of thing. Interesting that it's going the speed approach, but doesn't have a card, Wiccan. It's kind of interesting, but cool. Speed is a really fun card to play. Obviously, Frigga, a really winning inclusion that you could swap out for any of these hand generation cards. Frigga has been incredible. My favorite move is to copy Victoria Hand with Frigga, because now if you play that second Victoria Hand, she becomes a 2/7 herself. But also interesting to see a card like Anti-Venom included. Just a great way to be able to play more cards as well. So cool deck. To see that people are playing. The next one we have is, again, a Wiccan one. This is the one that has the highest cube rate, the highest win rate, but as you can see, the games are significantly less, and it is sticking to kind of that Wiccan approach that we see with cards like Gore and Eliath, but also cool that it's including a card like Devil Dinosaur. So obviously keep in mind, even outside of this Victoria Hand deck, you see your opponent play Wiccan, you see a Quicksilver come down, keep in mind that they probably have Eliath in their deck. Like, it seems like Eliath is always with Wiccan. But moving on from the kind of shield hand generating focus of the card, we'll move into discard, where Victoria Hand also has a good place with cards like Swarm and then, of course, Helicarrier. It's cool to see that Collector discard, Helicarrier discard is back. A discard card that's been forgotten in a lot of ways. Victoria Hand is there. I have a version of this deck, not too dissimilar. I don't have Corvus. That is really fun to play. And it's cool to have Helicarrier in the Collector back, and obviously all those cards benefiting Victoria Hand. So this one, again, much lower game amount, but still strong win rate. Cool discard deck that you get to play as well. That you can have availability to a lot of these cards pretty early on. Obviously, MODOK being a huge enabler of playing a lot of Swarms with Victoria Hand. And then we have the decks that I've come up with. This is the discard one that I had that is, like I mentioned, not too dissimilar. I'm curious, what am I missing? Corvus, and instead of APOC, I'm playing Silver Samurai. I actually think that Moon Knight is not a good inclusion in here. The amount of times that I hit something I didn't want to. He's a really, really great card, but I think Silver Samurai has been better because I can target the Swarm or target the Scorn, that type of thing. I know what I'm going to hit more reliably than Moon Knight, where he can sometimes have a 50-50. Nonetheless, this is the discard version that I've been playing. This is my deck in particular. Like I mentioned, having a good time with it. And then this is the other one that I really focused on that I made day one. Very similar to all the decks that other people are playing with Iron Patron and Victoria Hand. Valentina has been one of my favorites. I think my favorite play so far has been to play Valentina onto Iron Patriot on 3, and then that 4-cost card from Valentina behind the Iron Patriot. That's been a really, really fun way to play this deck. But really enjoy this one. And then, of course, the one that I made the video about that I have just... It is astonishing how fun this deck is. And I realized as I was making this video that I'm almost kind of cheating my way into a Wiccan. I don't have a Wiccan because I play Electro on 3, and then if, I only ever play Electro if I have Misery in hand, but Electro on 3 and then Misery on 4, and by doing that, I get the second on reveal of Electro, and then Electro is destroyed, so I can play more than one card. I now have +2 energy, the same way that I would have from Wiccan, but of course I don't have Wiccan, and I didn't have to play those cards, I didn't have to play on curve perfectly. But that extra energy, I see why Wiccan is such a strong enabler of this, because those cards that I'm generating with Maria Hill and Mirage, and of course the Hood, I'm able to play, and it's been extremely fun. It's also fun to play cards like Electro and Crystal, cards that I don't get to play a lot. I have been having like this deck, because it's weird, because it's off meta, you get to play a card like Electro Misery. It's been very, very fun to play. However, it's also been extremely competitive and helped me climb. I'm in the high 90s now. And this is one of the decks that's enabling that. So have a lot of fun with the card. Overall, what do I think about Maria Hill? What do I think about Victoria Hand? That she goes well with Maria Hill, but also that she's a card that I highly recommend you spend your keys on. I don't like telling people how to spend the resources because it's a challenging decision, because how many resources do you have? What is your collection level? What cards do you like playing, right? Keep in mind that just because it's a good card doesn't mean that it's a card you have to play. Play the decks that you like. If you're a destroy gamer and that's what you like playing, are you suddenly going to switch over to a hand generating deck? Probably not. I mean, you might. Maybe you'll switch over and find, hey, this is a new archetype I've never played. I didn't know that I enjoyed it, right? Those things can happen. However, just because it's a good card that other people are enjoying doesn't mean that you have to. So weigh that as you decide. Sure, what Victoria Hand is really beneficial. She's a strong card in the decks that benefit from her. She's fun to play, and I think she enables an archetype that's going to have a long-standing place in the meta, similar to what Doom 2099 did, which I'm grateful Second Dinner is doing to expand our options. However, if you're not playing this type of deck, you don't necessarily need her because she is very niche while being very fun. So I do recommend her if that is something you enjoy doing. So tomorrow we also have Moonstone being released. I'm pretty excited for that card. Excited to try out a C6 deck, but also a Patriot deck. I think that Patriot is going to be a great place for Moonstone. It's going to be, again, a kind of a Patriot's kind of fallen off. I mean, don't get me wrong. Patriot's great, but it's you got to have everything right with Patriot, and then a lot can go wrong, and I feel like Moonstone is a way to buff that deck a little bit more. I don't think it's going to be Ultra on Patriot. I think that's way too telegraphed and way too niche, and not niche, but way too narrow of a win condition. I'm excited to try some other random Patriot, not random, a specific Patriot deck that I think is going to be pretty fun. So exciting things coming down the line. Looking forward to all of that. Hopefully looking forward to being able to have you see those videos. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. Happy snapping.